million barrels of oil production here in the U.S. could equate to 1 million new jobs. This is according to our next guest, John Hofmeister, former head of U.S. operations for Shell Oil and the man who made that alarming prediction of $5 a gallon gas. Sir, thank you for joining us. We need
Thanks
jobs.
for having me.
We need jobs. Is this the way to do it?
You know, every time we hear the jobs being mentioned in Washington, I can't but think about all the hundreds of thousands, even millions of jobs that are being created overseas in other countries where we're buying the oil. We use 20 million barrels a day of oil in this country, and we produce 7. We're on our way to 6 because of the Gulf of Mexico moratorium that may have been lifted officially, but it's still a moratorium de facto. Regardless of what somebody would tell you, go to the Gulf, you'll find no drilling. But we're going to go down to 6 million barrels a day, and we're still going to use 20. We could create those jobs here. We used to produce 10 million barrels a day. Why don't we have a national plan, a national strategy that the president could lead to get back to where we used to be, and those 3 million barrels a day extra that we could produce over the next several years would create real high-paying, high-benefit American jobs.
But it's not.
And why we don't do it is all wrapped up in politics.
Okay, because that was my next question to you. We know the demand is going to continue to increase thanks to our overseas brethren. We know that I don't care what you say, we are going to keep driving here in the U.S. There's no way you're going to figure out a way to fly me to work anytime soon. So the demand in the U.S. is going to continue. And then there's a national security issue. I'm not following, and maybe it's the oil companies, and I know the book you have coming out is Why We Hate Oil Companies. Maybe the oil companies are the problem.
Well, there are those who would make that argument. Oil companies do one thing and one thing only. They make money for shareholders, how and wherever they can. If they're not allowed to drill in the United States, they'll drill somewhere else in the world. Their mission is to make money for shareholders. That's what they're chartered to do. Here's the rub. In 2007, 2008, I was hauled into Congress along with 4 other CEOs to testify, why do we have these high gas prices? What are you doing about high gas prices? I said 6 hearings in 18 months. We need more access to more domestic resources so we can produce more energy in this country. That was 2 years ago, over 2 years ago. We're going back to high gas prices. What has the Congress, what has the president done to learn the lessons from the 2007, 2008 debacle? We know that the loss of disposable income in those years helped tip this country into recession. We're going right back to where we came from. Yep. The 111th Congress did nothing. The president is doing everything possible to strangle the hydrocarbon industry, including the moratorium in the Gulf of Mexico. The Secretary of the Interior postponed the next 5-year leasing plan until 2017. 2017. They'll be gone a long time by then.
Right. Well, that's what we do, right? We kick the can down the road. Before I bring the panel in, because I really want to keep talking about this, gas is up 13.6% year over year. What other alternatives should we be looking at? Or are they all a joke right now? Because ethanol clearly was a disaster.
Ethanol was a disaster. It still is. But we're still pouring taxpayer money into subsidizing it. And we're still not drilling for more oil. There is no substitute for the fact that we could conserve. We could conserve. We did conserve during the recession. People stopped driving. That lowered the demand, lowered the price. But when people get back to work, guess what? As you said, you have to drive to work. We don't have mass transit in this country. We could be putting money into mass transit. That would help. But the kind of fleet changeover to high mileage vehicles, hybrids, electric, will not have a material impact on the demand relationship with oil for most of a decade. Right. And so what are we going to do in the meantime? We're going to pay through the nose.
Well, and so then, and John, sir, please stay with us, because I want to bring the panel in on this and talk about the notion that gas prices continue to go up and up and up. Is it possible that it becomes a luxury item? Now, we have an analyst out there that says oil will be $300 a barrel within a decade. And at that rate, it is entirely possible that we're looking at oil and gasoline becoming caviar, chocolate truffles, luxury items that only the wealthy can afford. Is that, I mean, Doc, do you think we'll get there? Again, I live in Jersey. I can't get anywhere without a car.
Absolutely. And I think that the formula John's suggesting makes perfect sense. You drill and you conserve and you pour money into mass transit. So you have a 3-pronged approach that puts people to work in two different ways, that brings the price of gas down so people have more disposable income. We have to be practical now. I think that the theories that ethanol might rescue us, or solar, or wind, they're just theories that are appealing because we'd like an easy way out. It's the same as people who take drugs. They don't want to feel the pain. You got to do the real thing here. It's a three-pronged approach. He just said it. It makes perfect sense.
Joey, I'm not giving up my SUV innocence. Jersey, it's all I got.
Love him.
We have a president that says no right now. Can Congress overrule him?
I think you're going to see a lot more work taking place with a Republican Congress right now, at least as it relates to the House of Representatives and a Democratic president. But on Keith's point real quick, Doc, I don't think we need to abandon the alternatives. I think we still need to explore them. I think that this is a multifaceted approach. And I also think that, and you've heard it said a million times before, Tracy, Fernando, Doctor, that necessity is the mother of all invention. And I think if we continue to just pour into this gasoline and use it without looking and exploring these alternatives, we're going to be on a road to nowhere. I think it is about time that we looked at other alternatives and explored them.
Again, though, here's the kernel of what you're saying. The government knows what industry should do. That's the kernel of what you're saying. Believe me,
why are you putting words in my mouth?
When industry looks inside itself and says, you know what, there's money to be made in solar and electric and alternative fuels, believe me, the entrepreneurs of America will be all over it.
Well,
It's not
Fernando,
there
address
right
that.
now.
You're the business community. I mean, where are they? We need them.
What we need right now is to get our automakers to be able to come up with developing engines that probably don't need to run on gas.
Right.
You know, one of the things that I've always discussed with my friends out in the street, cab drivers alike, is that, you know what, you can't eat or drink oil. You know, you can consume it, but you cannot eat it. We have enough resources in this country to be able to trade off what we have for that black oil.
Right.
And you know what? And if we're able to make the smart decisions, I think that oil would certainly come down and it would be affordable.
But we can't.
In the meantime, I think that our big three automakers need to come together and need to present Americans with a whole different
vision.
John,
profitable.
John, I want you to jump back in here. Is it possible that we're going to get to a point where it's a luxury to drive a car?
Only if we're completely irresponsible and give up the ghost. We have more energy in this country than we'll ever use. There's 1 trillion barrels of oil in Colorado, 500 billion barrels in North Dakota. All we have to do is get permission from our government to go produce it. We have the technology, the people, and we have the private money. We don't need taxpayer money. There's no need for high-priced oil any time in the future because, as someone was saying, we do have transportation alternatives. We could get rid of the internal combustion engine over a 20, 30-year period, replacing it with hydrogen fuel cells.
So basically, we have the oil, we have the money.
Car.
The only thing we don't have, unfortunately, is an approval from the president, John. Am I correct?
It's a Congress and the president. They really have to work together on this, or they will frustrate one another.
Big problem that we have is the environmentalists. These people will drive anybody crazy. You know, when they get on their horse and they say no drilling in Colorado, it's going to ruin the environment, and no drilling in the Gulf of Mexico because we'll have another disaster. And when you have groups of people that have interests and have a lot of money behind them, they drive the nail right to the White House.
Should we just forget about the environment? Should we just ignore what's necessary for the environment?
No, but
you know what? Let's kill people. Let's have dirty air, but let's get oil. What we need to do is find a suitable alternative, and we have to respect these different interest groups. They're interest groups.
We need to respect them, but we need to explore our resources.
We have to wrap this, but we certainly need a solution, and that would be a really, really nice New Year's gift, Mr. President. Thank you, John Hofmeister, for being with us, sir.
Thank you.
All right, the rest of these guys are going to stick around and keep fighting. Follow the money.